My name is Leo. I'm 17 years old, and for most of my life, I thought I was lucky. Lucky to have been adopted, lucky to have a home, lucky to be loved. At least, that's what I believed, before I found the diary. But let me start at the beginning. I remember the day they came to the orphanage. Autumn was fading into winter, and the trees were dropping their last golden leaves like confetti. The other kids were hopeful, loud, smiling. I wasn't. I'd already learned that hope was dangerous. But then, they walked in. Mr. and Mrs. Holloway. They looked like the kind of couple you'd see on a postcard. Warm coats, gentle eyes, soft-spoken voices. When they saw me, they both froze. Like they recognized me. Like they had been waiting for me. They didn't ask many questions. No background check, no long interviews. Just one simple thing. Do you like music? I nodded, even though I didn't know the first thing about instruments. A week later, I was living in their house. Just like that. The Holloway house felt like something out of a snow globe. 2 stories, cozy corners, warm lighting that always smelled like cinnamon and books. There were fresh meals every day, big hugs in the morning, a birthday party within my first month, complete with a cake that had my name on it. Or so I thought. Things were good. Too good. And then, it started. They began calling me by the wrong name. Not all the time, just enough. Enough to make me notice. Sometimes, when Mrs. Holloway brought me breakfast, she'd set the tray down and say, "Alex?" Then freeze. Then smile. I mean, Leo. Sorry, sweetheart. Slip of the tongue. The first few times, I laughed it off. Maybe it was an old pet's name, a cousin, a friend. But the way her eyes clouded, the way she suddenly became quiet every time she said it, it felt like something deeper, something deliberate. I started paying more attention. In Mr. Holloway's study, there were several photo albums neatly stocked on a shelf, but they were always closed, never displayed, never touched. Once, I tried to open one, and before I could flip a page, Mrs. Holloway appeared behind me. Calmly, almost gently, she closed the book. Just old memories. They don't matter now. But the way she held it, like something fragile and sacred, said otherwise. Later, while exploring the upstairs hallway, I noticed a small door tucked behind the linen closet. It was locked, but there was a gap under the door. Just enough for me to shine my flashlight in. Inside, I saw shelves, frames, a small table with a porcelain angel, and then one particular photo, clear as day. A boy, maybe 10 or 11 years old, dark hair, pale skin, piercing eyes, and a face that looked just like mine. Not similar, not a coincidence. It was as if I was looking at myself, or some version of myself I'd never known. That night at dinner, I finally asked, "Who's Alex?" The table fell silent. Forks stopped clinking. Mrs. Holloway stared at her plate for a moment too long before looking up. "Don't worry about that, honey. It's just the past." But her smile didn't reach her eyes. It wasn't the kind of smile that comforted you. It was the kind that covered something. They never mentioned the name again. Not by accident, not at all. And yet, from that day on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't really their son, that they weren't loving me. They were loving someone I reminded them of. And worst of all, I might be the only one who didn't know the script I'd been cast in. They started small. A comment here, a suggestion there. At first, I didn't think much of it. "Let's trim your hair a little shorter, Leo. It'll suit your face better." "Why don't you try this navy sweater? It brings out your eyes." But the clothes didn't feel like mine. The haircut made me look older. And the smile they gave me after, it wasn't for me. It was the kind of smile you give when a memory comes to life, not a person. I found myself becoming someone I didn't recognize. Piano lessons I never asked for. Books I didn't want to read. Foods I hated being served every week because you always loved this, remember? Except I didn't. I didn't remember because they weren't my memories. They were his, Alex's. That name had started to echo in my mind, not just from the times they slipped up, but from how often other people said it, especially when they thought I couldn't hear. One afternoon, during piano tutoring, my instructor sat beside me and said, almost absent-mindedly, "Your posture's back, just like it used to be, Alex." She corrected herself so fast you'd think she was bitten, but the damage was done. I wasn't crazy. They weren't just replacing memories. They were replacing me. The worst part? They weren't cruel. They were kind, loving even, but in the wrong way, like actors refusing to break character. Like I was a stand-in, filling a role that no one dared admit had been vacated. Every room in the house started to feel like a stage set. My bedroom was too neat, too designed. Everything was coordinated, not personalized. No clutter, no fingerprints of childhood chaos. I searched for photos of me, not Alex, in family albums, but every frame still held only landscapes or artistic shots. Nothing candid, nothing that said, "This was your moment." One night, I got up and wandered down the hall. The house was quiet, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock. I passed the linen closet, and my eyes landed on that locked door again, the one behind it all, the hidden room. I knelt down, flashlight in hand, and again peeked under the gap. The frames, the dustless shelves, and one photo I hadn't noticed before. This one was different. A birthday party, a chocolate cake, streamers, and two people, Mr. and Mrs. Holloway, with tears in their eyes, holding a boy between them, Alex, wearing the same sweater I had on that morning, same color, same pattern, same everything. The next day, I made up my mind. I needed answers. I waited until the Holloways left for the store. Their routine was always precise. Saturday morning shopping, back in 2 hours. I went straight to the study. The desk drawers were locked, but they weren't hard to pick. A paperclip and steady hands were enough. Inside, files, old bills, piano certificates, report cards. Then, I found it. A birth certificate. Alex Holloway, born July 8th, same year as me. Except I was born in August. I knew this. I remembered it clearly. So why did this document look so official? I flipped the page. Another document, a guardianship form with my name on it, Leo Morales, the adoption file. But something stuck out. The dates overlapped, barely a month apart. Why would they adopt a child just weeks after losing one? Unless they never really let him go. I closed the drawer with shaking hands. My eyes scanned the room, and for the first time, I noticed something that had always been there. The large portrait hanging over the fireplace. A boy in oil paint. Formal, stoic. I had always assumed it was me. The resemblance was uncanny. But now, I saw it. The slight difference in the nose. The eyebrows, sharper. It wasn't me. It was Alex. I stepped back. My legs trembled. I wasn't standing in my home. I was standing in his. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I hadn't looked like him, would they have picked me? If I played the wrong notes on the piano, would they be disappointed? If I ever said no, would they still love me? Or had I simply been cast? I turned to the closet across the room. Its door was open just a crack, and inside, hanging alone, was that same navy sweater, folded perfectly, waiting. I stopped trusting the quiet in that house. It had weight, the kind of silence that listens, waits, and watches. Every creak in the hallway, every clock ticking slightly too loud, felt intentional, like the walls themselves were holding a breath I wasn't supposed to hear. But one night, the silence betrayed itself. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard it, a soft thump. Not from the hallway, not from the stairs. It came from inside my room. I sat up. Another noise, a faint tap, then a dragging, like something brushing against wood. I pressed my ear to the wall next to my bed. Silence. Then, tap, tap, scrape. I stepped back. My heart raced. It wasn't a mouse. It was too slow, too deliberate. I returned the next day with a flashlight, determined not to be afraid of my own room. I ran my fingers along the wall behind the dresser. Nothing. Then the air vent above my bed caught my eye. The screws were rusted, but loose, like they had been opened recently. I climbed up and removed the vent cover. A rush of stale air met me, and something else. Inside the narrow duct, hidden behind insulation, was a small wooden box, covered in dust, but carefully wrapped in cloth. My fingers shook as I pulled it out and placed it on my bed. It was locked, but barely, a rusty latch. Easy. The lid creaked open. Inside, a leather-bound notebook, a diary. The name written on the first page in small, neat handwriting, Alex Holloway. My stomach flipped. This wasn't just any journal. It belonged to him, the boy I was becoming, the boy I was replacing. I turned the pages, slowly. The entries began innocent enough. Talk of school, favorite meals, a love for drawing animals, a pet rabbit named Moses. But as I kept reading, the tone changed. Mom says I'm being selfish again. Dad won't let me go to the party. They say I make them worry too much. But I'm not trying to be bad. I just want to go outside. They moved my bed, said I needed to stay in the other room for a while. It's darker, smaller. They said it's better for me. I heard them whispering last night, something about getting help. But they won't let me talk to anyone, not even Miss Carter from school. I'm not crazy. I know I'm not. I paused. The next few pages were ripped. And then, the last entry, dated exactly 2 weeks before my adoption. They told me I can't leave, ever, that the world out there will hurt me. But I think it's not the world they're scared of. It's me. Or maybe they're scared of losing me again. If I don't come back, I want whoever finds this to know. I tried. I tried to be the son they wanted, but I don't think that was ever really me. My hands trembled. At the bottom of the page, a sentence scrawled hastily in pencil. If I disappear, look in the dark room. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew one thing for certain. Alex never left this house. I put the diary back in the box, heart racing. I felt watched, exposed. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept the box under my bed, half expecting someone to burst through the door and demand it back. But no one did, which made it worse. A few days later, I returned to the duct, hoping to find more. Nothing. But as I reached in, my hand brushed something rough wedged behind the far corner. Another object, a small paper envelope, sealed, faintly stained. Inside was a lock of dark hair and a strip of fabric, torn, faded, red. It looked like a piece of a shirt with dried, dark blotches on it. Blood. My breathing turned shallow. I stepped back, gripping the box, the diary, the cloth, the hair, all of it, proof of something I didn't understand yet. But one truth rang in my ears louder than anything else. Alex didn't run away. He was trapped. And maybe he still is. I stopped trusting the quiet in that house. It had weight. The kind of silence that presses on your chest when you're trying to fall asleep. A silence that waits, listens. A silence that knows you're starting to question everything. And once I started, I couldn't stop. The diary didn't just change how I saw them, it changed how I saw myself. I wasn't just a kid who got lucky, I was a replacement, a carefully selected mirror. Every smile they gave me, every gift, every meal, it all began to feel like part of a performance. I didn't know if they saw Leo at all. Maybe they only saw the shadow of someone they lost. But one thing haunted me more than anything written in Alex's diary. If I disappear, look in the dark room. At first, it sounded like poetry or metaphor, but the more I wandered the house, the more I realized it wasn't. It was Saturday afternoon. They were out for groceries, their weekly ritual. Like always, I used the window of freedom to investigate. No more tiptoeing. I started in the basement. It was the oldest part of the house, filled with boxes and old furniture covered in sheets. But what caught my eye wasn't hidden. It was what wasn't supposed to be there. A narrow door, wedged into the far corner, locked with a padlock. I stared at it for a long time. It looked like it didn't belong. The paint around it was fresher than the rest of the wall. The air around it colder, heavier. I ran upstairs, grabbed the thin wire I kept hidden in my sock drawer, and returned. Click. The lock opened too easily, like it hadn't been meant to keep people out, just to suggest they stay away. I pulled the door open. Darkness spilled out. And then, the smell. Musty, rotting cloth, damp earth, and something else. Something living once, but no longer. I stepped inside. The room was small, cold, silent. The walls were concrete, unpainted. No light switch, no windows. Just one bare bulb dangling from the ceiling, not working. I turned on my flashlight. That's when I saw it. A child's bed, rusted metal frame. The mattress was stained, sunken in the middle. Against the far wall, a shelf with folded clothes, a small stack of books, a drawing pad with pages torn out. On the floor, 2 shoes, too small for me, and a broken toy, a stuffed rabbit missing one ear. I swallowed hard. The air felt tight. Then I looked up. Carved into the wall above the bed, hundreds of lines, scratch marks, crude drawings etched with something sharp. A house, a crying face, a cage, and words. One sentence, carved again and again. I'm still here. My knees buckled. This was the dark room. Alex had lived here, or rather, been kept here, trapped. I turned, ready to leave, when I heard it. A noise, faint but unmistakable. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks, deliberate, slow, from the wall behind the shelf. I froze. There was no breeze, no wind, no pipes. It wasn't the house settling. I wasn't imagining it. I dropped to my knees and pushed the shelf aside, revealing a wooden panel cracked at the edge. I pulled at it with shaking hands. It groaned open. Behind it, a tunnel. Narrow, dirt-lined, just wide enough to crawl through. A rush of cold air hit my face. It smelled of dust, mold, and something human. I stepped inside. The room was small, cold, silent. The walls were concrete, unpainted. No light switch, no windows, just one bare bulb dangling from the ceiling, not working. I turned on my flashlight. That's when I saw it. A child's bed, rusted metal frame. The mattress was stained, sunken in the middle. Against the far wall, a shelf with folded clothes, a small stack of books, a drawing pad with pages torn out. On the floor, 2 shoes, too small for me, and a broken toy. A stuffed rabbit, missing one ear. I swallowed hard. The air felt tight. Then I looked up. Carved into the wall above the bed, hundreds of lines. Scratch marks, crude drawings etched with something sharp. A house, a crying face, a cage,
and words. One sentence, carved again and again. I'm still here. My knees buckled.
This was the dark room. Alex had lived here, or rather, been kept here, trapped. I turned, ready to leave when I heard it. A noise, faint but unmistakable. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks, deliberate, slow. From the wall behind the shelf. I froze. There was no breeze, no wind, no pipes. It wasn't the house settling. I wasn't imagining it. I dropped to my knees and pushed the shelf aside, revealing a wooden panel cracked at the edge. I pulled at it with shaking hands. It groaned open. Behind it, a tunnel. Narrow, dirt-lined, just wide enough to crawl through. A rush of cold air hit my face. It smelled of dust, mold, and something human. I didn't crawl in. Not yet. I was shaking too hard. My chest felt like it would split open. But I knew what I had to do. Someone was in there, or had been, and whatever the Holloways had buried wasn't gone. It was waiting. I stood in the room for another full minute before I could move, not because I was spared, though I was, but because I could feel it, the presence of someone else. Not a ghost, not a memory, a person, breathing, waiting, hoping. I closed the panel. I replaced the shelf. I locked the basement door behind me. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I faked a stomachache and went to bed early. I lay in the dark, clutching Alex's diary to my chest. Tomorrow, I would go back. But next time, I wouldn't stop at the door. Next time, I'd go all the way in. I went in with nothing but a flashlight, a bottle of water, and the kind of resolve that comes only when you've lost your fear. The tunnel was tighter than I expected. Damp earth brushed my shoulders. Cobwebs clung to my face. Every foot forward felt like crawling into someone else's nightmare. But then, I heard it again. Breathing. Shallow. Ragged. Close. I kept crawling. And then the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber, no larger than a closet, dirt walls, a rotting mattress, and in the corner, a figure, curled, thin, filthy. He didn't move at first, just stared at me with wide, sunken eyes, blinking slowly, as if I were a hallucination. Then he whispered, "Are you real?" He said his name, barely audible. Alex. And I almost collapsed. His hair was overgrown, his skin pale as paper, ribs visible beneath his shirt. He was 17, same as me, but he looked half alive. I helped him sit up, offered him water. He winced at the light, flinched when I touched his arm. I asked how long he had been down here. He said, "Since they said I was broken." They hadn't faked his death. They hadn't buried him. They'd hidden him. Locked him away in a box beneath the home, pretending he never existed, because he didn't fit the role they wrote for him. Instead, they replaced him. With me. It took us hours to crawl back through the tunnel. Alex was weak, barely able to stand. I had to carry him half the way up the stairs. When we reached the main floor, dawn was breaking. Light streamed through the windows, and for the first time, that house felt like what it truly was, a cage dressed like a home. We didn't wait. I grabbed the car keys from the hook by the door. I didn't care if we had a license. I didn't care if we got caught. We ran. We drove until the gas tank was nearly empty, past towns and trees and signs I didn't recognize. Alex didn't speak much. He stared out the window the entire time, as if trying to remember what real life looked like. We stopped at a bus station 2 cities away. I used what little money I had from a part-time job to buy 2 one-way tickets to the furthest place the map offered, a small coastal town by the sea. We found a shelter that took us in,
No questions asked. For the first time in years, Alex slept in a real bed. And, for the first time ever, I felt free. But freedom doesn't come without fire. A week later, the Holloways were found. Their house had burned down in the middle of the night. Some said it was faulty wiring. Others suspected it was intentional. The report didn't go public. No photos. Just a paragraph in the back of the local paper. 2 bodies. No survivors. I don't know if it was them trying to destroy the truth or destroy themselves. Maybe they couldn't face the world without their fantasy. Maybe they realized they had lost both sons. One they locked away. The other, let them burn. Alex and I never spoke of it. Not really. We lived quietly. He started therapy, took long walks, drew pictures again. I got a job at a bookstore, enrolled in night school. We rented a tiny apartment by the sea. Some nights we stayed up until sunrise, talking about nothing at all. But every now and then, he would ask me the same question. Why did you come for me? And I always gave him the same answer. Because no one else did. I kept his diary. It sits in a box beneath my bed, along with the lock of hair, the cloth, the drawings, reminders of who we were, what we escaped. Some nights I read it again, not out of pain, but to remember the boy I never met, and yet somehow became. People ask me sometimes if I miss them, the Holloways, if I ever think they loved me. And maybe, in their broken way, they did. But love without truth is just control. And I was never loved. I was used. But, in being used, I found something real. I found a brother. Not by blood, but by survival. We were both boys they tried to erase. And yet, here we are. Still breathing. Still alive.
Some stories don't end with justice. They end with survival. If this story moved you, like, comment, and subscribe for more tales of heartbreak, betrayal, and redemption. This is Burned by Love, where every scar tells a story.